Movie dialogue is like an iceberg. 10% is what they say, and 90% is what they don't say. And that is what we call subtext. So let's look at one of the best uses of subtext from the movie Scarface. Okay, so this scene opens up on a nice little courtyard, and we see Al Pacino, who plays Tony, and F. Murray Abraham, who plays Omar, talking business with Alejandro Sosa. And we're going to see why the scene you're watching isn't really the scene you're seeing. What they're saying and what they're not saying are two entirely different conversations. If you could hear what they were saying and the scene wasn't muted, it would be safe to say that this scene is about two parties negotiating a deal. Talking turkey, wheeling and dealing. But that's not the point of this scene at all. What we're really seeing is the unwilling transfer of power between Omar and Tony. Up until this point, Tony has been the junior guy in Omar's eyes, despite the fact that Tony has never embraced the idea of Omar having any authority over him at all. From their very first meeting, Tony rejected the idea that Omar was better than him in any way. But he didn't let it ruffle his feathers, though. When he was overlooked or pushed aside, he let it slide. He was far more shrewd than anyone else, and he showed it whenever possible, which brings us back to the courtyard. The acting and body language is so great here because you don't need to hear a word to see that old Omar here has forgotten that he's in an industry that operates outside of the law, and any assumption that Tony was going to play by the rules and concede the floor to him were wildly misplaced. And this is where we see Tony do what Tony does, and he begins to shine. This man is in his element. That might as well be his courtyard, his table, his employees. Simultaneously, we can see Omar is out of his depth, but doesn't know it. He sees Tony's interruption as insolence. In Omar's eyes, Tony is a kid talking out of turn. Omar hasn't cottoned on to the fact that Tony has better insight and a tighter grasp on the situation than anyone else at that table. But as all of this is soaring safely above Omar's head, Sosa is putting two and two together. And I love it because you could see it on his face. You can absolutely tell just by looking at his face that he is assessing the situation and really forming a solid opinion of Tony versus Omar in this scene. And that's what's so brilliant about this scene in particular. It's the acting. Great acting isn't simply getting the lines right. It's telling the story with your body. Everything they're thinking, everything they're feeling is written all over their face. It's in the way they move, and it's in the way they just sit there. Just look at this snapshot. Everything you need to know about these two characters is right there, captured in one moment. Omar is clearly confused about the shift in power. He's sitting upright, uncomfortable, unsure about how to regain authority in this situation, and Tony is unbothered and cool as a cucumber. When Sosa returns, we see Omar flounder in vain in an attempt to regain some control. And the disappointment and realization washing over Omar's face is perfection. You can actually see everything sort of click into place in his mind, that he has been shifted out of the way and Tony is the man with the influence. If they don't already, they should study this scene in acting school. Entire courses could be built around the perfect use of body language and facial expressions in this 4-minute scene alone. And that, my friends, is the beauty of subtext. Or the show, don't tell quality of storytelling. It's the meaning behind words, the things the characters don't say out loud, but that we understand anyway. In real life, people rarely say exactly what they're thinking or feeling. We hide emotions, we speak in half-truths. Movies that use subtext mirror this kind of behavior, and it makes characters feel more realistic. Instead of a character saying, "I'm scared," they might fidget, avoid eye contact, or try and change the subject. Subtext keeps us engaged without having to explain everything. And it's one of those elements that when a movie gets it right, it just enhances the whole story. So, let me know if you have any favorite movie moments where they use subtext perfectly and the scene you're watching isn't really the scene you're seeing. Thanks for watching.